There are places in this world that seem to carry the weight of their own sorrow, places where the air itself feels heavy, laden with the echoes of the past. One such place is the St. Helena Orphanage, located on the outskirts of a forgotten town. Decades ago, it was a sanctuary for abandoned children, but a fire, brutal and unforgiving, turned it into a smoldering graveyard for those who lived within its walls. No one talks about what happened that night. The townsfolk whisper stories of cruel punishments, the cries of the children, and a headmistress who was as heartless as she was terrifying. They say her spirit, along with those of the children, still haunts the charred remains of the building. On a cold, moonless night, 4 young explorers ventured into St. Helena, seeking truth in the tales. But some truths are not meant to be unearthed. Lisa, Mark, Ravi, and Emma had planned the trip weeks in advance. Urban exploration was their thrill, and this orphanage was the ultimate challenge. They stood outside the crumbling structure, their flashlights casting long shadows on its scarred walls. "Looks like something straight out of a horror movie," Ravi joked nervously. Adjusting the strap of his camera, Emma shivered, pulling her sweater tighter. "Why did we think this was a good idea?" Mark smirked. "Because we're not afraid of a few ghost stories, right?" Lisa, the leader of the group, turned to them. "We stick together, no wandering off. Got it?" The others nodded, though unease was already settling in their stomachs. The moment they stepped inside, the air changed. It was colder, heavier. The faint smell of burnt wood and something metallic blood maybe lingered. Their flashlights revealed hallways littered with debris, broken toys, overturned furniture, and scorched walls. As they wandered deeper, they came upon a large room filled with the remnants of a once lively playroom. Rocking horses sat still in eerie silence. Charred dolls lay lifeless, and a cracked chalkboard still bore faint scribbles of forgotten lessons. Emma's flashlight landed on a doll sitting upright on the shelf. Its porcelain face was cracked, and its eyes seemed to follow her. "Creepy," she muttered, stepping closer. Suddenly, the doll's head jerked to the side, its glowing eyes locking onto hers. Emma screamed. Stumbling backward, the others rushed her, their flashlights scanning the room. "There's nothing there," Lisa said, though her voice wavered. "But I saw it move," Emma insisted. Mark laughed nervously. "Old toys, loose parts. Don't let it get to you." As they left the playroom, Ravi glanced at his camera. The screen showed faint, shadowy figures darting behind them. But when he turned, the hallway was empty. The group made their way toward the main exit, but the door they had entered through was no longer there. In its place stood a solid, unyielding wall. This was the way out," Lisa stammered. Mark pounded on the wall, his frustration mounting. "What the hell is going on?" Before anyone could answer, loud, deliberate footsteps echoed above them, followed by the faint sound of children giggling. The group froze. "Upstairs," Ravi whispered, pointing his flashlight toward a staircase cloaked in shadows. Lisa hesitated. "We shouldn't," but the sound of crying, faint and pitiful, interrupted her. It wasn't a child's cry, it was something more guttural, almost inhuman. "We need to see what's up there," Mark said, already moving toward the stairs. At the top of the stairs, they found the headmistress's office. It was a large, foreboding room filled with scorched furniture and broken glass. On the desk lay a small leather-bound diary, its cover blackened by fire. Lisa opened it, revealing pages filled with frantic handwriting. The words told the story of Martha, a 10-year-old girl who had lived in the orphanage. She wrote of punishments, starvation, and the cruel headmistress who locked children in the cellar for days. The last entry was smeared, the words barely legible. "The fire! She locked us in! She's still here!" As Lisa read aloud, a cold gust of wind slammed the door shut. "Did anyone else feel that?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Ravi scanned the room with his flashlight, and that's when they saw her, a small, charred figure crouched in the corner. Her hollow eyes glowed faintly as she stared at them. "It's Martha," Emma breathed, tears streaming down her face. Before anyone could react, the figure let out a piercing scream, and the lights from their flashlights flickered violently. When they stabilized, Martha was gone. Panic set in as the group tried to leave the office, but the hallway had changed. It was no longer the same one they had come through. The walls seemed to close in. pulsing as if alive. They turned a corner and found themselves face to face with a large portrait. It was of the headmistress, her face stern and unforgiving. But as they stared, the portrait began to change. The paint peeled away, revealing a burned, skeletal face with glowing red eyes. "Run!" Mark shouted. But before they could, the headmistress's figure stepped out of the painting, her charred form towering over them. "You dare trespass in my orphanage?" she hissed, her voice echoing unnaturally. The group scattered, each running blindly through the maze of hallways. Lisa and Robbie ended up in a room filled with bunk beds. The air was thick with the smell of ash. As their flashlights scanned the room, they saw the faint outlines of children sitting on the beds. "Help us," a voice whispered, barely audible. The ghostly figures turned toward them, their faces burned and hollow. One by one, they began to stand, their movements jerky and unnatural. Lisa grabbed Robbie's hand. "Don't look back," she said, pulling him toward the door. But as they ran, a child's face appeared inches from Lisa's, its hollow eyes staring directly into hers. She screamed, stumbling into Robbie. Meanwhile, Mark found himself in the basement, where the fire had burned the hottest. The walls were blackened, and the floor was covered in ash. "Guys!" he called, but his voice echoed back to him, warped and distorted. A faint giggle came from behind him. He turned, his flashlight landing on a small figure. It was a child, its body charred beyond recognition, yet it moved toward him with impossible speed. Mark tried to back away, but he tripped and fell. The child lunged, its skeletal hands grabbing his face. His screams were cut short as the room was plunged into darkness. Lisa, Emma, and Ravi regrouped in the main hall, their breaths ragged. "Where's Mark?" Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. Before Lisa could respond, the headmistress appeared again, her skeletal form wreathed in flames. The children's spirits surrounded her, their hollow eyes fixed on the group. "You cannot leave," the headmistress growled. "You belong to me now." Lisa pulled the diary from her bag. "She's tied to this place because of her crimes," she said, realizing what they had to do. They ran to the fireplace in the main hall and threw the diary into the flames. The fire roared to life, and the headmistress let out an unearthly scream as the children's spirits began to glow. One by one, the children faded into the light, their sorrowful expressions replaced by peace. The headmistress, however, burned in the flames, her screams echoing until there was nothing left. The door to the orphanage reappeared, and the group stumbled out into the night. As they caught their breath, they turned back to the building. In the attic window, a silhouette stood, its hollow eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Lisa whispered, "It's over, isn't it?" But deep down, they all knew the truth. Some places never let go. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, like, share, and subscribe for more horror stories.